So Ruth talked a little bit about TCOM, Transformational Collaborative Outcomes Management. This is the theory that underlies the CANs. I'm not going to talk about the theory itself. I'm going to talk to you about the values that underlie the theory. Okay, here are the values that underlie the theory. These are the values that underlie the CANs, essentially. And it's important for you to understand that these are the values, because values, as you know, our values show up in our behavior. Our values show up in how we talk. Our values show up in how we interact with each other. The values of the CANs should show up in the way that it is used, right? All assessments and interventions should be culturally responsive and respectful. That means that assessors need to understand who you are as multicultural individuals, right? Not everyone's the same. We're all human, that is true. But we are different flavors of being human because of the circumstances that brought us to who we are today, right? I mentioned earlier on purpose that my parents immigrated to this country. Their immigrant experience is very central to who I am and how I was raised. And that needs to be brought into an assessment about me. And we need to be respectful of people's differences, and that needs to be reflected in the CANs. Okay, people should have voice and choice with regard to participating in assessments and in interventions. Again, we're working with you to help identify how we can support you. We're not forcing you to do things because we think that they're the best thing to do, right? This is a consensus collaborative process. Intervention should be personalized, respectful, and have demonstrable value to the people they serve, right? There are things called evidence-based practices. I'm a psychologist. I had to know all of these evidence-based practices. I'm also a psychologist who worked primarily with kids in foster care. Okay, when they do these large evidence-based practice studies, kids in foster care oftentimes are considered outliers in those studies because they have so much trauma that they don't respond in the same way, right? So what this tells me, I'm not saying evidence-based practices aren't good. It's the opposite. I'm saying evidence-based practices help us understand the floor of what is best practice, but we always need to consider the individual when we're trying to find the best way to work with them, right? So let's start with the evidence-based practice, but let's consider the uniqueness of your child and your situation. Collaborative processes inclusive of children and families should be used for all decision at all levels of the system, right? So it's not just about, was your child ever hospitalized for psychiatric purposes, and that's going to doom your child for the rest of their life. They're going to use it as a predictor for everything going forward. That's not the way we think about the CANs. That's not how we set up the level of care based on the CANs, right? Consensus on action is the primary outcome of a collaborative process. In other words, if collaboration is going well, it means we're building consensus. And I'll talk more about that in the next slide. And finally, the information about the people served and their personal change should always inform decision-making at all levels of the system. I'll give you a great example of this. In Illinois, we did John Lyons, the developer of the tool, his team did a study in Illinois years ago that showed that, and it's a kind of a no duh, you guys are going to say no duh, April. They showed that the best outcomes for kids was when the distance between the door of their home to the place they were receiving services was shortest. The shorter the distance, the better the outcome. Well, no duh, right? But this helped Illinois move their services around so they were closer to where kids needed them. Okay, so rather than having a third office in Chicago, right? Let's put it out somewhere out in central Illinois where they need more support.